Good morning, folks. Welcome back to day something question mark of Elden Ring lore videos. Today we are going to be going through VaatiVidya's Cosmic Sorcerers and reacting to it. And now, folks, I say reacting, and I worry that a lot of you use a normal Webster dictionary level of definition for reacting, which means you're not prepared for what's about to happen. There's going to be some lunacy, some rambling, some, dare I say, rants. And God forbid we start talking about the stars again. I will have questions about physics, but it's going to be fun. Folks, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you have a cup of coffee or whatever. Well, actually, you wouldn't. I record these at like 9 a.m. I post them at 9 p.m. So if you have coffee, how does the caffeine not keep you awake? I can't drink caffeine at night. Anyway, folks, not important. Shocker. Most of what I say is not important. Yet here you are. You should bring me up to your therapist because I think they'd have something to say. Folks, the lore of the Elden Ring's Cosmic Sorcerers. Let's dive in.
Long ago, an astrologer looked to the sky and found something called the primeval current in the stars above.
Just found it? I gotta start looking up more.
Then, miraculously, what they saw in the cosmos actually manifested in reality, and the very amber of the stars rained down on the lands between. This glintstone of the cosmos would go on to inspire those that studied it, but there was
the image he chooses to show. It rained down from the cosmos, the glintstone, this magic of the universe. This dude over here made a big bonk stick out of it. You see the big hammer? Look at this big hammer.
The cosmos would go on to inspire the
That's what I would do. Everyone else would be like, look, we can control gravity. We can control time and space itself. I made a big bonk stick. This is a bonk. I'm going to need a lot more caffeine today.
Those that studied it. But there was also a darkness up there between the stars, and what some saw would break their minds and inspire a fate that was worse than death. This is the story of Elden Ring's cosmic sorcery.
I thought this was going to be a happy video about the stars, not madness. Didn't we watch Frenzied Flame already? Why is everything got to be all about crazy people? Actually, I don't think there's any sane people in the lands between. No, not a one. I'm literally racking my brain for a sane person in the lands between. I'm like, well, we love Fia. No, Fia's batshit nuts. Every demigod is nuts. Half of them, like, legitimately just, like, mentally handicapped by curses and corruption. Dee's fucked. Dialos is fucked. Gideon is obviously messed up. Nephili's not bad. I mean, she's got daddy issues, but she's not bad. Melina is messed up. Rogier, well, he ends up, you know, Wow. What's her name? That helps with the, so Hugh is messed up, but the girl that handles the Spirit Ash upgrades, she's sane. She's got it pretty well together. Okay, so her, Nephili, and the Lord that helps adjudicate for Nephili, the one who originally sends us to Stormvale Castle. Okay, so there's three sane people. I'm off topic, I think.
Force that would define an entire era of life in the lands between.
For the record, I'm watching this video 95%, like 5%. We're watching this video because, of course, we're going to watch all these videos. I'm having fun with it. It's great. I'm glad you're all enjoying it. 95% of the reason I'm watching this video is I want to know why they wear their hats, and I want to know where they come from. Because whoever first decided, dude, we should wear these crazy hats that make us look like Socrates and Plato, you know, fucked a corpse. Like, it keeps me up at night. Really good camera work here.
It all began with the founding Reign of Stars, a legendary sorcery that was the founding glintstone sorcery. You might have missed this spell in your playthrough, but it's located here, hidden along an illusory path leading to the heretical rise within the mountaintops of the Giants. Its description reveals that it is the eldest primeval sorcery, said to have been discovered by an ancient astrologer. Now, we don't know who this astrologer was, but we know they were not alone. For it was here, in these icy peaks closest to the sky, that the astrologers who preceded the sorcerers established themselves. And with ancient tools...
Can I just say, like, just briefly for a moment, the music, so I have to, like, I get DMCA'd, like, copyright stuff for some of the music, and that's fine, I navigate it. But the music choices for these videos have been so good. They're so good.
Of astronomy, they looked to the cosmos above and read fate in the stars. But this was more than mere stargazing. The stars quite literally govern fates in Elden Ring. We learn this from the starlight shards and amber starlight items. The former is a pale blue shard. It's what remains of a passing flash of starlight, and the latter is the same, except it has a pale amber glow, and it tells of the belief that if the stars command our fates, then amber-hued stars must command the fates of the gods. During Celivis's questline, the blue starlight shards are distilled into this blue tonic, which can be given to other NPCs to turn them into summonable puppets. You are quite literally using starlight to forcibly control and take away their fates when you do this.
Okay. Brief note. So Celivis's questline, I got his quest. I went to Gideon with the thing and said, Gideon, hey, Celivis gave me this. Gideon, like, you know, you have to kind of choose who to trust, but I decided Celivis sucks. Gideon is trustworthy. Like, we have disagreement points, but I never felt like he was, you know, very deceptive. And so I decided to give him the potion, not give it to Nephili without, like, anything. Dude, Celivis is fucked up. Like, that's way worse. Like, this is literally the first I've understood what would have happened. I never looked it up. That is supremely fucked up. Dude, Celivis is a creep. Who, by the way, when I went back to see him, he was dead. Someone had murdered him. And I gotta be honest, I was really upset about that because I wanted to kill him. He was going to be the only NPC I murdered. And once we were done helping Ranni, I could murder him without getting in the way of her plans. Someone beat me to it, and I don't know who killed Celivis. Anyway.
These exact same intoxicating drafts had historically been used in the Eternal City, as is exemplified by the Night Maiden and Swordstress puppets, who actually chose this controlled fate for themselves, presumably so that they could better serve the needs of the Eternal City. You can learn more about that in this video, where we discuss the Eternal City in its entirety.
Lore of the Lands. So I just watched the Lore of Elden Ring is Eternal, and it wasn't Lore of the Lands. Am I crazy?
But the Nox of the Eternal City weren't the only ones that were drawing power from the stars in this way. The royal house of Caria, too, drew great power from astrology.
Bastards.
The telescope item, for example, is actually a smaller part of a larger astrological tool that was once used.
Let's go in. Let's see how many video. Let's see if we can go any of VaatiVidya's videos without referencing the telescope, the item I literally never used. At this point, it's starting to feel personal.
Used by members of the Carian royal family for their own brand of Carian astrology that revolved around Renala and the full moon rather than the stars. But to most, the moon was not considered equal to the stars, and it was actually the stars that most would draw upon for their sorcery. These sorcerers would come together at Raya Lucaria, a place of learning that institutionalized the practice of glintstone sorcery. And this is our little triumvirate of three factions. There's the Nox and their descendants, there's the Carians, and there's the Sorcerers of Raya Lucaria, who all trace their origins back to astrology. These factions overlap at times, they interact and clash, and their shared history is fascinating and complicated, but it all comes back to the cosmos.
So that makes sense to me, but again, it begs this question that I've brought up a million times, which is a timeline, because Caria Manor, Raya Lucaria, inexorably tied together. We know that for both its modern, recent, and distant past. But the Eternal Cities, like, how long have they been underground? So whatever relationship used to exist has been long since gone. And so it becomes, again, that timeline question of, like, what connections still really exist. Because, Caria Manor and Raya Lucaria, they're obvious, but the Eternal Cities are so distant now.
The end. But let's return once again to the founding reign of stars, which tells us that the glimpse of the primeval current that the ancient astrologer saw became a reality, and the stars' amber rained down on this land. But what exactly is the primeval current? Well, let's break down the term. The word current means it's a moving flow, or torrent, and the word primeval means that this torrential flow likely existed from the very beginning of time. And thanks to the description for Comet Azure, we know that the primeval current is a distant starry expanse, something that is visually similar to the torrential comet generated from this spell. But what's truly amazing about this cosmic force is that somehow, this ancient astrologer managed to manifest a rain of stars upon the earth merely after glimpsing it in the primeval current.
So, I was thinking about that from when he first mentioned it. So, it kind of, and maybe Vaati's building to this, but it gives one of two possibilities in my head. I'm sure there's more. The first is that these stars were, like, they react. Like, there is a level of sentience, or at least, reactive nature to them. And so when someone observed them, they reacted. Like, they respond when observed and then began to behave. But then the other version is, a level of latent magical power this astrologer had that he didn't know about that activates, think of any number of anime intros where, it turns out they're the chosen one. So, I mean, either one could make sense, but both would materially change the way we approach this.
Of the cosmos far away. And I speculate that starlight shards are actually another example of this phenomenon. Their description reveals that these are what remains of a passing flash of starlight, and we exclusively loot these at the foot of giant stone astrolabes, which are these ancient stargazing tools. Thus, rather than being a piece of star that has fallen to the ground, I think these might be a byproduct of the act of looking up at the stars. Why else would we loot them here? And so, in this same manner, first established with these starlight shards and then the founding reign of stars, glintstone sorcerers would go on to replicate this phenomenon, using their powers of comprehension to conceive of new cosmic elements that could be manifested in reality. Or, put another way, they formulated spells that let them throw giant rocks at each other, and it was a huge hit with everyone.
Really, really a big fan of when he simplifies it to what it really means. No use bonk stick. Throw blue bonk. Bonk enemy from far. Okay.
But among these glintstone sorcerers were some who wished to truly understand the mysteries of the primeval current, no matter the cost. These were sorcerers like Lusat and Azure, who would literally become crystal in order to sync up with and better understand these powers of the cosmos. And then there was Selen, the Graven Witch, who threw all ethics to the wind and wished to see humanity ascend no matter the cost.
We do know her.
And make no mistake, the stars are alive, in a sense. Look at Estelle, for example. This is a malformed star, but a star nonetheless, birthed from a void.
I drank coffee wrong. I'm fine. Keep watching.
Or so it is said. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Most sorcerers, it seems, would just be content with merely manifesting cosmic power, and so they would embed a piece of physical glintstone into a staff and then use that glintstone as a sort of catalyst.
So I've noticed all the staffs. We never use staves throughout the game, but actually, this side by side, I actually really want to just pause and look at it. No reaction content here, folks. I'm just exploring. Interesting. So the Carian goes for, this rhomboid diamond. Rhomboid diamond. It's just a diamond. What the fuck am I saying? You know what? It looks like the icon for The Sims. Ooh, Elden Ring Sims mod would go hard. Just get Morgott stuck in the pool. I don't know what's wrong with me. This is like, so you play this game and it's, it's a game. You move through it, you're fighting stuff, you're doing things, and like even throughout playing, though, I noticed, and observing these side by side, it's even, you more to notice, like the level of detail is so impressive. So as Vaati noted earlier, this idea that there's three main schools, there's the Eternal Cities, there's Raya Lucaria, and there's the Carian Manor. So you have the right, the middle, and the astrologers, the ancient from Nox to the left. But you get these three meaningfully distinct arcane foci, which is to say they're staves. That is such an important level of detail that I think so many games will be like, it's a staff. What do you want from me? It's like they use magic. It's a staff. Whereas this, you can see the history built through it. It's just another example of why this game is so good, because it begs you asking more questions. It warrants and deserves this level of deep diving. I am constantly impressed by the levels of depth to what is here.
For the stars above. And since glintstone was needed to channel spells, and since sorcerers needed glintstone to study, I think having access to physical glintstone would have been a really important thing. And luckily for the sorcerers, glintstone, being sourced from meteors and comets, had fallen to the lands between before.
Yeah, and we've seen tons of evidence. It's not just flavor text in a room. Like we talked about that. It's not just like throwing stuff in there. We've seen consistently that every area of study, there is physical glintstone being used by, whichever practitioner it is for the study of glintstone magic. So it makes really good sense.
So these valuable crystals were mined and put to great use. And so atop and amidst enormous quantities of glintstone in the lakes of Leonia, a place of learning was built, an institution known as the Raya Lucaria Academy.
The institution.
Sorcerers as a whole were powerful. They could read fate in the stars, fire cosmic projectiles at their enemies, and potentially even command the fates of others. So naturally, there needed to be an institution for their power, a place of learning, but also a place of hierarchy and even governance, where rules about sorcery could be debated and enforced. When you journeyed through Raya Lucaria, you would have collected these symbols of their institution. These are stone masks called glintstone crowns, and not just anyone is supposed to wear these crowns. They are a symbol of achievement, and they represent one's mastery of a certain conspectus or school of learning within the academy. They also make a good weapon, if all else fails. But why was this design specifically chosen as a symbol of achievement? Well, according to many item descriptions, there isn't just life in stone, but there is a wisdom contained in stone as well. So their masks were crafted with stone and set with glintstone. The glintstone is typically set upon the eyes and or the brain, a tradition that I speculate originated with the sorcerer Azure, who was one of the first, if not the first, glintstone sorcerer. His blue-green glintstone crown was set with crystals and eventually replaced his own brain and skull altogether, which...
Dude. Not a role model.
Enhanced his powers by helping him catalyze with glintstone, though it clearly came at great physical cost.
Yeah!
And I speculate that this crown eventually replaced his own brain and skull, because glintstone kind of does that. It corrodes, it consumes. We see its effects best on other creatures, like the dragon Smaragd, who was a devourer of sorcerers with a body that became corroded over time by their glintstones, thanks to that strict sorcerer diet. But as with Azure, this corrosion did not come without benefits, and he now breathes a powerful glintstone breath.
His breath one-shot.
The sorcerer Azure was an early sorcerer of the primeval current. But he wasn't the only one. There was also the sorcerer Lusat.
So Azul and Lusat, are they? I mean, they're in the game, right? Because he's got the outfits, which means you must be able to pick them up. I don't remember anything. I would recognize if Sauron had a cousin with a blue eye.
who experienced a similar glintstone convergence of body and mind. Together, these masters of sorcery each glimpsed a part of the primeval current. And from what I gather, the primeval current seems like the sort of thing that can only really be glimpsed once before it either breaks or terrifies the viewer. Azure and Lusat only have one primeval current spell each, after all. For instance, when Lusat glimpsed into the primeval current, he conceived of the spell Stars of Ruin as he beheld the final moments of a great star cluster, and upon seeing it, he too was broken. And when Azure glimpsed into the primeval current, he saw darkness and conceived of the spell Comet Azure, but was left both bewitched and fearful of the abyss. Both Azure and Lusat clearly had a prominent role at the Academy, but Azure specifically was the first founding glintstone sorcerer to have an impact upon Raya Lucaria, for there is a line of research called the Carolus Conspectus, dubbed the oldest of the Academy's lineages of study, begat by the sorcerer Azure. Sorcerers who follow in his footsteps by studying this conspectus pursue the mysteries of comets, leading to new kinds of comet sorceries like glintstone comet shard and shard spiral. Each conspectus appears to be named after a founding individual. These stone crowns are designed after actual people, after all, people you can see in the flesh upon their matching portraits in the Academy. So even though the Carolus Conspectus follow the path began by the sorcerer Azure, their conspectus of learning must have been sort of formalized by someone named Carolus. But as time went on, more conspectuses needed to be created as new lines of inquiry were discovered, and so logically the Olivinus Conspectus should have been the second to be created, for this line of research is also concerned with the study of meteors in the primeval current, except this conspectus began with the sorcerer Lusat. Their spells study clusters of stars, with lesser spells like glintstone stars and star.
Am I crazy, or would a Elden Ring prologue game, let's call it a prologue, where it's literally just Harry Potter-esque, the whole game is just us being a student of arcane arts, like the whole game is Raya Lucaria, maybe occasional travel around the lands between 10,000 years ago before everything went to shit. Am I crazy, or would that go super hard? I feel like that would be awesome. Like just tons of Spellblade duels, different styles of fighting, huge focus on the glintstone. Hell, we could, like, the main character we play could be one who becomes one of the original conspectuses. That would be so dope. Okay.
Shower, all echoing the great Stars of Ruin spell that originally broke Master Lusat. Lusat and Azure were true masters at the Academy, after all. They were actually dubbed Grandmasters, specifically, with special robes that reflected that, and it's...
Okay, the source of that is Azure's Glintstone robe. So, like, 1,000% that confirms. It's not a mod. These are in the game. I don't know where the hell these were.
It seems like no one ever went on to achieve such a rank or sacrifice as much as they did, and they sacrificed a lot. They can barely even move anymore, and when Selen talks...
Anymore? Does that mean they're still alive? I don't know anything about... Like, when I finished this game after 150 freaking hours, I was like, hey, we didn't get everything, but damn it all, we made a good dent. And every one of these videos I watch, the percentage of how much of this game I've played shifts, and it's never to my benefit. When I first finished this, I was like, we did like 75% of the game. I feel good about that. I'm 10 videos into Vaati's stuff. I swear to God now, at best, we did 50% of the game.
Talks about them, she talks about their bodies rather than a traditionally living person. Perhaps they've actually ascended to a higher plane of existence. That might explain why they weren't really around anymore to form their own conspectuses, something that was left to Carolus and Olivinus and others instead.
Did you just chill in there?
With such enigmatic founders, many dedicated themselves to the study of glintstone, taking vows of virtue and austerity. In return, they received the deep blue robe of Raya Lucaria, and were able to study on its grounds. Some nobles of Leyndell were even permitted to study here, clearly, though their meagre accomplishments never warranted them earning a stone crown, and fittingly, you only see them casting glintstone pebble in-game.
Yeah, and it's obnoxious as hell.
A powerful spellcaster would often go and cast a spell called Terra Magica from the tallest belfry of the Academy. This sigil would be cast with such strength and allow for such a vivid experience of spellcasting success that it turned many a fledgling into a true sorcerer in a flash of understanding. But not all learning took place at the Academy. In fact, a couple of signature spells were specifically given to those who departed from the Academy to embark on journeys. Starlight is a spell that guides such sorcerers in dark places, and it reads, "Even during the blackest nights, sojourns underground, or imprisonment in jail, the stars are never far from a sorcerer's side."
Seriously, a video game exclusively of this would be so good. Like, every time I read some of these flavor texts, he explains, like, these, journeys they went on, these training, like, all these other details. This would be so good.
And then there was Glintstone Arc, which would allow these fledgling sorcerers to cleave through the ranks of the fools that would outnumber them.
That's a much smarter way to do that
Such
fight.
journeys were encouraged by the Academy. There was even a conspectus for this practice called the Herodes Conspectus, with a crown that was granted to scholars who engaged in nomadic study away from the Academy. In-game, this crown is worn by errant sorcerer Wilhelm, who fights with night sorceries and wields the Staff of Loss, which enhances night sorceries. This staff doesn't even have a glintstone embedded in its tip, and supposedly it can only cast night sorceries as a result. That's how important asceticism was to some sorcerers, and they believed that it was a powerful path towards discovery. This conspectus also seemed to see value in depriving the senses. The crown of Herodes is blindfolded, after all. We see this same practice of veiling the eyes down in the Eternal City as well, and the Nox's descendants were of course accomplished practitioners of night sorceries, which seem to be thematically tied to this blindfolded, ascetic embrace of the void. Moving on though, this habit of sending fledgling sorcerers away must have posed a bit of a problem, however, as when war broke out in the Lands Between, Raya Lucaria would close and seal its gates, preventing access to most, including its journeying fledgling sorcerers. The only way to get back inside was to use a glintstone key to activate the warp magic within the seals. These keys only seem to belong to accomplished sorcerers, and they remember their users, meaning that thieves or bluntstones like Thops could not get inside.
So this spot of the game and the way he's describing it particularly causes a little bit of like... So my background, I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a master's in accounting. My specialty was audit, like, business process flow, like, are things working? And that includes security. Like, anytime games like this have security systems where it's just like, oh, if you have the key, you're good. And now they've said like magic, blah, 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 but they're saying there are people journeying can't get back. And it's like, this is where you would always have, there's a reason security throughout history is always one of the most complex issues and almost always has layers to it. So, for example, you have this key issue. You'd still have someone at the gate looking out and be like, nah, that dude clearly looks like he belongs here, but he could have stolen that stuff. Let's ask him some questions, have him demonstrate some magic. Then we'll bring him in with a few guards and we'll do a more thorough inspection if he passes those first layers. Like, you have layers of those security. So it's always wild to me when there are, oh, well, you were out journeying, but you don't have the keys, so you must not be one of us. It's like, it doesn't survive contact with reality that you would operate that way because it's so vital to have your people back during times of war and things like that. So it's just nitpick.
Current age, Thops mentions that the Academy closed its gates after declaring,
I forgot to go back and talk to Thop and give him my key when I was done in there because I could always fast travel with Grace. Oh, I completely forgot to go. I'm sorry, Thop. He's probably still sitting on that bench, that poor bastard.
That they wouldn't interfere with the shattering. Now, this suggests to me that the Academy might have had a bit of a habit of striving for a sort of neutrality or indifference in world affairs. Indeed, they had developed an entire conspectus who sought power in order to quell conflict. These were the battle mages of the Heimer Conspectus, who wielded stone clubs and spells of cannon and gavel. A gavel is commonly used as a symbol of judgment, but rather than interfering with outside affairs, I believe the Heimer Conspectus mainly functioned as the Academy's judiciary. Their crown is even blindfolded, which is widely regarded in the real world as a symbol of unbiased justice.
Yeah,
and
justice
with their
is blind.
preparedness for combat, the Heimer Conspectus were cited as being the only ones who dared to venture outside whenever war had broken out. And just like the blindfolded members of the Herodes Conspectus, the battle mages of Heimer believed that seclusion was no way to foster discovery, and instead believed that it was only a convenient form of escape. That said, we do find sorcerers of other conspectuses outside the Academy as well, though you can sort of infer that they're a bit wary to be away from home, because they're often accompanied by marionettes.
Yeah.
The marionettes are dolls, constructs that were crafted and animated by the sorcerers who are their masters.
Why do they attack us on sight? So, like, out in the world, they attack us, and there are plenty of enemies in this world that, I mean, it makes sense to me. They're like, oh, it's another person, everyone's evil. Like, it's like Fallout Apocalypse level, let's just fight. And I get that. Like, I get it within the confines. But when we go into Raya Lucario, we have the glintstone key. We pass their security. Like, there's no talking like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, everyone just attacks us. Like, am I crazy? Or there's not a lot of discourse before people just start murdering each other. I guess. No, but people can. I'm still confused about dying. So people can't die anymore because the Rune of Death was stolen. Tarnished resurrect anyway, but the people we kill don't really die, so they're not afraid of death, so they become more like conditioned to just violent responses, because what's the consequences? My head hurts again.
There are a couple of variants. There's an avian variant with curved swords that can fly and throw fire pots, and then there's the typical marionettes with spiked spears, short swords, and short bows.
The bows I hate.
Lots of short bows.
Yeah,
these
so
will
many
commonly
short
drop
bows.
down upon you in ambush, and while they like to go a bit ballistic, they do act as crudely effective support for
Ballistic.
a ton of the sorcerers that you'll meet in-game. You'll even find a few of these down in the Raya Lucaria Crystal Tunnel, where glintstone miners are hard at work extracting glintstone and ore. These miners don't use conventional tools though. Instead, they mine with a digger's staff, embedded with a glintstone, casting spells such as Shatter Earth or Rock Blaster. A fascinating little detail here though is that these mining spells carried enormous stigma at the Academy because they marked their user as a failed scholar, perhaps as someone who had to turn to menial labor, lacking the intelligence to pursue the complex mysteries of the cosmos. Indeed, the Overseer's attack by crushing scraps of glintstone rather than with any advanced sorceries. At the end of the crystal tunnel is a crystallian, an inorganic being that was hewn from crystal long ago. But these are more than mere constructs. They are ancient and even possess a faint sort of intellect dubbed the wisdom of the stone.
They possess a faint sort of intellect. I'm sorry. Faint sort of intellect, and they've got Farquaad's hairstyle and 3 buck teeth. That's gotta be a meme. You look intelligent.
Ago, they even made a concord, or an agreement, with the Carrion royal family. We don't know the nature of this agreement, but some can be found chilling upon the moonlight altar, allowed to stay in close proximity to their crystals, perhaps. And for their part, we do know that the Crystallians did teach the Carrions a spell called Magic Downpour to mark the occasion. And Raya Lucaria sought kinship with these beings as well, for they are close to the ideals of the primeval current, and so are revered guests of the sorcerers. The best example of this might be down in the dimly lit Academy Crystal Cave underneath Raya Lucaria, a crystal cave that is not mined, perhaps out of respect for the Crystallian duo at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, this was the
There
duo.
are even living quarters down here, and I suspect these belong to a group of sorcerers called the Crystal Cadre, which was a group that was founded to research the wisdom of stone possessed by the Crystallian. However,
Is it cadre or cadre? I've always called it cadre, C-A-D-R-E. Basically, a cadre or cadre is, you know, a small group generally. Maybe that's just British English versus U.S. English. Now I'm curious. Let me know.
just like the primeval current, these sorcerers clearly don't have all the answers on these beings. They call them inscrutable, and note that they have but one clear purpose, and that is to safeguard their crystals unto the end. Though there is one theory on these beings, and it's that they are waiting, yearning for the return of their creator, who will carve for them new brethren. A few sorcerers down here near the Crystallian are in possession of the Twin Sage Helm, which marks them as members of the Twin Sage Conspectus. These were the elites of the Academy, committed to study and excel in sorceries of all kinds, and I assume it was these members, these elite members, who would climb out of this cave and cast the legendary Terra Magica that would cover the entire Academy's grounds from this tall belfry that we mentioned earlier. But the Twin Sage Helm wasn't the only mark of a proficient scholar. There was also the Witch's Glintstone Crown, which was granted to a scholar who excelled in her studies, which also merited the title of Witch. And again, you can see most of these Conspectus portraits hanging in Raya Lucaria.
So, am I crazy, or is this just like horrifically sexist Academy? Like, you have this study, you could pursue this art, or you could be a witch. You could study the ancient power of spell magic, the twins of old with access to everything. You could be a judiciary, or you can be a witch. If you're a woman, you must be witch. Like, now let's be clear. Elden Ring is a phenomenally progressive game. I genuinely love everything about it. And when you have games that demonstrate such progressiveness, you can do something like this, and it's very fascinating lore instead of just shitty writing. And so I'm just curious to understand, is this a niche of just Raya Lucaria is just male bullshit? Which then becomes this whole other quick question because of Renala's influence and presence. But I'm curious because it kind of looks like this is just kind of the thing guys do across Renaissance. Like, this is a very normal historical level of oppression, though, you know, the levels of intent behind it, you know, vary, of course. But it looks pretty clear.
For example, here is the Witch, the Twin Sage, Carolus, Olivinus, and all of these portraits are hung in the debate parlor of the Academy, where members would likely have engaged in argument in order to test and help.
Oh, and you can see Renala there too, to the left next to the Witch, to the left of the second from. I could just show you with my mouse. What am I doing? Well, if you follow the riddle, I have a mouse. So the Witch is right here. You can see Renala here, and then here's the four others we've talked about, Twin Sage and the others, with very normal sounding names.
Help validate their ideas about sorcery. It's also where I assume they argued about whether certain things even should be allowed to be learned here, or whether certain members should be exiled, but we'll get to that.
Burn the Witch!
Shortly, because first, the final conspectus that we haven't yet mentioned is the Lazuli Conspectus.
Dude's eye! Hold on.
The final conspectus that we haven't yet mentioned is the Lazuli.
Dude's eyes! Okay, folks, the Lazuli Conspectus is clearly for the absolute stoners. Get it? Glintstone magic? They study the stones. Whoa. So I think I just discovered a whole new area of magic. Like sometimes you need to be the glintstone, you know? Like a lot of you look at the glintstone, but you're not being the glintstone. Whoa.
Conspectus. These sorcerers studied lunar sorceries, a quote-unquote heterodox pursuit that views the moon as equal to the stars, with a robe coloured in the hue of the full moon, which signifies their heresy. And of course, these sorceries include many signature spells of Caria. And so we finally arrive at Caria. This is Carian Manor, and to the south are their stargazing grounds, both situated upon the western coast of Leonia, which, according to the map, has always been closely associated with Carian royalty. They have been around for a long time, a really long time. Specifically, Caria traces its roots all the way back to the ancient astrologers that existed alongside the fire giants. This is most apparent when you're looking at two items. First, the Sword of Night and Flame, which became a storied sword and treasure of Caria Manor. It was clearly crafted to...
That would be an awesome cosplay sword to have like hanging in the background. Like, it's just, not only is it like storied in its, you know, history and the development of the game as by virtue of this discussion, but it's just beautifully like dichotomous in its nature. It's just contrasting night and day. It's so cool.
Commemorate the astrologers' early experiences with the primeval current and their shared experiences with the fire giants as well. And the fact that Caria inherited this sword suggests that they trace their ancestry back to the time of this sword. And then there's the Stargazer heirloom, which tells of the rise of Caria as a house of royalty.
Yes, the Harry Potter heirloom. Avada Kedavra!
Through Renala and her full moon. The young astrologer gazed at the night sky as she walked. She had always chased the stars every step of her journey. Then she met the full moon, and in time, the astrologer became a queen. This royal house continued this tradition of stargazing and raised princesses and Carian knights to serve as their retainers. One of the foremost Carian knights was named Loretta, a woman we talked about recently in the video I did on the Eternal Cities, as it was rumored that she was an Albinauric. Albinaurics, as you may know if you watched that video, were widely despised in the Lands Between, though Caria is one of the few factions that seems to be pretty friendly with them. Albinauric sorcerers are found all throughout Caria Manor, and one, named Pidia, is literally called a Carian servant, linking the Eternal Cities with Caria in an alliance, perhaps, that might have allowed them to learn more about the stars from the Albinaurics. At any rate, Renala, with her full moon sorceries, was the champion of Caria, a prominent one too, apparently. And it's no surprise when you look at the powerful characteristics of her full moon. It has immense gravity, and it eclipses all other magics. It lowers defenses. It is enchanting, and Renala used all of these traits to charm the Academy, to bewitch them, and become not just the Queen of Caria, but also the master of Raya Lucaria itself. And so, of course, here is her portrait, displayed most prominently in the Academy of Raya Lucaria, right next to what many assume is a portrait of Selen. For if you unmask her in-game, then she actually looks very similar to this witch.
Can you unmask her? I don't even think I ever considered that as an option. I'm sure it must have been a dialogue option at some point. Huh.
One who was worthy of an entire conspectus, and apparently was the most promising sorceress in the history of the Academy, but even Selen, with all her promise, or perhaps because of her promise, would not be tolerated in the end.
If you recall, I was exiled from the Academy of Raya Lucaria.
Yeah.
It was for attempting to restore the primeval current of Glintstone sorcery. The toothless pedantry peddled by the Carian royal family can rot for all I care. I want Glintstone sorceries that open our minds, unbound by terrestrial taboos.
For Selen to know so much about what she calls toothless pedantry peddled by the Carian royal family.
I don't think I ever noticed that Radagon's wolf has ear piercings. Also, he's got a mad overbite, which we should probably take him to the vet for. But the earrings are pretty sweet. Also, his fur is real matted. We gotta get that. We gotta get a brush through that.
I assume she was a part of the Academy during Renala's reign over it, and that it was Renala's influence that finally led to the Academy's intolerance of primeval current research. And Selen wasn't the only one expelled from the Academy. The Masters Azure and Lusat, two of the founding masters of glintstone sorcery, were at some point driven from the Academy as well. And it's easy to see why. The primeval current is dangerous. Lusat's mind was broken after watching a star cluster break apart. Azure saw a darkness in the primeval current and was left fearful of its abyss. And imagine something so dangerous that just looking at it can damage your mind irreparably. In this way, the primeval current is almost Lovecraftian in it.
This is the first time noticing, because I never spent a lot of time looking at Estelle's face, because Estelle's face is, no offense, horrifying, but that eye shifting in the brain dome thing is clearly the same brain dome thing that Azulis or Lapis Lazuli, whatever the blue one is. Azulis is the green one. That makes sense to me. But those are the same little orb thingy. I don't know what I'm doing.
It's horror. We can't pin down the exact truth of
the fuck is that?
why it terrifies, but we see its terrible effects on others, and
what, we're just gonna swap to an image of a bipedal anemic cow and we're not gonna talk about it? Dude.
are left to wonder. What's more, this cosmic current is primeval. It's one of the first, if not the first thing to exist in the universe.
Hugs?
And
Aw,
the fact
no
that
hugs.
our cosmic origins might
Hugs?
be terrifying
Aw, no
really
hugs.
is kind of a bizarre
Hugs?
and
Aw, no
bewitching
hugs.
thought, right? I mean, I want to know what's in this current that's driving everybody insane. Although I will mention again, we kind of know that at least creatures like Estelle are up there, and Estelle kind of is a signature horrific Lovecraftian monster. So
Yeah, so I think this goes back to kind of my original when I gave the bifurcated answer of, it's one of these two things. I think the primeval current is potentially even as great as an outer god, and glintstone sorcery is a form of its worship by setting down the founding stars to begin that. But you stare into that, of course it's going to cause problems. It happens with every outer god, that there's a limit to how much a mortal mind can be exposed to that much. Just think of it like so a good example to kind of process is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, when he's going through the gate of truth. That overwhelming just like rush of information, like even Edward Elric, a genuine prodigy and phenomenally intelligent, like after it happens he's completely overwhelmed and then immediately starts pulling together being like, do it again. But now imagine to another length that much information rushing through you, if you can conceptualize it. To me, it makes perfectly sense that it drives people mad. As an autistic, one of the things that, like, so anyone else who's watching this who's autistic or knows any autistics, one of the things we talk about and we learn about for ourselves is sensory overload, which most of you have probably heard in some capacity. But sensory overload can also come with something. So my sister coined the term wet blanket. Make of that what you will. But it's this, what happens is it becomes this realization of how infinitely small we are, and suddenly the sensory overload, we sense everything. And it is, and this has happened to me, so this is personal experience. It is this overwhelming, everything is there, and it's just, you can't sleep. I mean, you're afraid to close your eyes because everything comes rushing in, and you need to actively like start doing some basic mechanical task to try and just get this to pass, because everything is there. The entire cosmos is open in front of you, and it's too much information, and it's like I'm working myself up just doing this, but I'm okay. Like, and it's just, there's too much. And it, now imagine that dialed up to 10 without any ability to compensate. I promise you, I would be driven batshit insane by that. It's so much. And so to circle all that back, I posit, whether it's an outer god, outer will, greater god, words, they're fun. Whether it is this, sentient outer god, damn it, is it greater will? Whether it's a greater will or not, is it is some level of, you know, way too much information. Of course, staring into it drives you crazy. A little bit gets you some power. Too much, you go crazy. And so it's that eternal balance between not being so ambitious that you throw everything away, which I think is honestly just a great parable for a lot of things.
Yeah. At any rate, Raya Lucaria was an institution now, with power and influence in the lands between. And
yeah, and apparently not great lights. Can we get someone better in charge of these lampposts?
with these things, naturally, there would have come a need for self-preservation. And the biggest threat at this stage wouldn't have been external, it would have been internal. The biggest threat was probing the primeval current too deeply. And so, while primeval current research seems to still be okay as long as it's under the Carolus or Olivinus conspectus, a line was drawn, and the Masters Azure and Lusat were eventually driven from the Academy, as was Selen the Witch. When we first meet her, Selen states that glintstone sorcery is rooted in the study of the stars, and she laments that most sorcerers have forgotten that fact. She resents that the sorcerers took their power and then sort of turned a blind eye to deeper research in order to protect themselves, and it's kind of easy to empathize with her and to see her as this underdog fighting for the truth against an enormous institution.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I empathize. Like, I went through corporate America. I know what it feels like to see something wrong and be powerless to stop it. But I think one of the most common storylines in organizations like this is, oh, the powers won't let me do these things. And I think 95% of the time, the answer is they were right not to let you do it. The problem is it is communicated horribly as this we know better, we're older and wiser bullshit instead of a, I genuinely want you to understand why we are saying no. I understand it is difficult for you to appreciate that we have done this. We have seen the horrors of what comes. And so I think for me, one of the most important things, like if I was this, person on the council saying, nah, we really don't think you've done this. I've sat on the board of directors for nearly a decade. And there are times where I reflect and I go, I made the right choice, but I communicated it poorly. Where, the stakeholders, the volunteers that are part of the organization I work for, I feel good that we restricted something, but it caused backlash because we didn't communicate it in a way that was understandable. And so I have lived this experience of going like, no, this is a bad idea, but I failed to communicate it. And especially when you create this, 20, 25-year-old ambitious, scholar magician versus these 80-year-old decrepit people, it's easy to create this gap of like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like it's the tale as old as time. And we've got to find a better way to communicate. Genuinely, this is why we're not doing it. Or maybe once every 5 to 10 years, to make sure we keep this, we choose one person to risk it, and we take it real seriously, but we're like, let's risk it. Let's remind ourselves why this is a stupid idea so that every generation understands and can see, so that we don't create these massive gaps in knowledge and wisdom and create these massive schisms. By the way, schism is your word of the day. It's very fun. Well, it's not fun, but it's a great word.
Even Thops thinks she's a good person in the end, but
I don't think you're supposed to touch people like that.
Can you really blame Raya Lucaria for taking a stand when you see this? This is a school of graven mages, a mass of sorcerers fused together so that they might be fashioned into the seeds of stars. As the lore goes, this was apparently a valid line of research into the primeval current, and that in the name of this research, fellow sorcerers should be collected and fused together in a cluster to, create a star made of life. These creations were considered the nightmare of the Academy, and rightfully so. They represented Selen's complete loyalty to the truth, no matter the cost, to her fellow man. Naturally, such a thing had to be forbidden. But then, you have to empathize with Selen a little bit and agree that it is a bit ironic that the exact line of inquiry that gave rise to the Academy was the very thing that posed a threat to its existence in the end.
I raise you Master Oogway's greatest line. Kung Fu Panda, by the way. The turtle, for those who don't know. We often meet our... like this, I'm paraphrasing, I guess. We meet our destiny on the path we take to avoid it. You forbid this magic. So instead of... you forbid this magic, and thus people are driven to go, why? They don't trust the people who have said no, so they pursue it. I refer you to the drug abuse resistance education in the 90s in the United States, or DARE program, many of you may know. We were told that drugs are horrible, they'll make your brain an omelet. And it was... so it was this huge forbidden thing. But they made it so ridiculous that our minds told us this can't be true. All evidence showed they were lying to us. This is not how drugs work. And so people pursued drugs because it was clear they were being lied to. Instead of just giving a sensible education saying, like, look, drugs can be fun. There's a lot of downsides to it. Let's help you understand. We don't think you should do it. But the important thing is to arm you with education. It's the same thing with sex education. Arm people with real knowledge. Don't do this. It is verboten. 9 for the sex. It's like, you're not helping. It's the same thing with forbidden magic that makes you go cuckoo brains. Oh, that's why they're called the Cuckoo Knights. They're all crazy. Oh. Wait, am I crazy? No. No.
Eventually, the Academy would seek to rid itself of Caria's influence, but the Carian royal family had long prepared for the disloyalty of the Academy. There's a reason why the Carian Knight's shields are extremely magic resistant. There's a reason why there are many spells based on a policy of Carian retaliation, where magic can be absorbed and then turned back against its caster. There's a reason why they're not...
Where's that? Okay, admittedly, remember... Okay, I'm remembering now that I never used any magic, so I don't know why I would know what that is. But when I do a magic run, I'm using that because magic users suck. Not you. You're fine. You're great. It's the other magic users I hate. Except for you. You know who you are.
Knights were specifically sworn to the moon, not the stars. Renala, as a proficient astrologer, might have even foreseen the eventual disloyalty of the Academy, although that's just speculation on my part. But before that, there was another...
I'm clearly playing... So I've been playing Sekiro for a week now. And I was like, why is this bitch rolling away? Parry! Parry, you son of a bitch! Wow.
War that would come first. A war against the Champions of Gold, which Caria was extremely prepared to face as well.
Is there a
the
lore
Order
video
of the
on
Erdtree
Pumpkinheads?
had conquered fire giants, the Storm Lords, and Caria and the Academy were next, it seems. Led by Radagon, who we now know was a part of Marika, a great war began. But here, the Order of the Erdtree actually met their match. Despite numbering fewer than 20, the Carian Knights were a match for even the Champions of Gold in battle, and enchanted troll knights fought on Caria's side as well, called into service from an ancient oath made with Renala, back in her youth atop the mountaintops of the giants. And so, instead of weathering a stalemate, a truce was proposed between the two parties, and sealed in holy matrimony.
Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions.
God damn it. You know, a lot of the demigods have specialties. Radagon's specialty is clearly that back. I mean, dude, look at that. Look at that, folks. I've got a decent back. I work my back a lot, you know, good rows, pull-ups, what have you. Technique matters. Don't be pulling up with your triceps and biceps. Don't do that. But like I get it.
Himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala. The Order of the Erdtree and the fate of the moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven.
And of course, we all know that Radagon is Marika, but no one else did, and so secrecy was of the utmost importance to Radagon, and he imposed this need upon his newly acquired vassals. These are the Carian Preceptors, essentially professors of sorcery who serve the Carian royals. They wear these blue robes embroidered with cosmic designs, which is a reference to...
You! Fucking knew it. I hate this asshole. That's why.
to Karya's astrological heritage, surely. But when Radagon married Renala, he ordered the Carian preceptors to wear an additional piece of attire, a mask with the mouth sewn shut with gold thread in that signature crisscross pattern that is emblematic of Radagon, to make it clear that all their matters were to be kept strictly private. For of course, Radagon was hiding something that might be able to be seen if anyone looked at him too closely. Indeed, this desire for secrecy was well-founded, for someone did look at him too closely during this time. A sculptor who secretly rendered this dichotomy between Radagon and Marika into his work. But no one else discovered Marika Radagon's secret, not until we came along. And long before that, Radagon would leave Renala, and her heart would go along with him. And it was then that those at the Academy realized that Renala was no champion, after all. When we see her, we realize that she was likely left quite witless and innate after this loss of Radagon, and so it was no surprise that the Academy took this chance to rebel against the Carian royals.
And see, that makes sense because, so I didn't bring it up at the time, but it was talked about that she basically enchanted and charmed her way to her position of power, which I think is interesting since she's clearly such a powerful magic user. You think she would have risen there both on the rank of her, royalty as well as her innate powers. So the charming her way to the top, like that kind of shit's going to blow up in your face every time. But anyway, the dawn of a new day.
With Renala essentially held hostage and safely locked in their grand library, the Academy went to war with Karya, focusing their assault upon Karya Manor, for that is where a siege commemorated by this graveyard of swords took place.
By the way, fun fact, folks, if you read those swords, there's information on it, and I've always known that.
The enchanted soldiers who fought on behalf of the Academy were named the Knights of the Cuckoo, wearing red and blue surcoats that depict their namesake and carrying shields that boasted high magic damage negation. They were explicitly purposed as mage hunters and have been quoted as stating, "Our enemy is none other than Karya itself." They also throw Albinoric pots, which reference the torture of Albinorics and the hatred of Albinorics that the Cuckoos have. And again, the Albinorics are found throughout all Karya, so these Knights of the Cuckoo were fighting against some true enemies here.
Albinoric question. I should have touched on this with the Eternals because they were talking about more there. Now, my understanding is there's Gen 1 Albinorics, the tall, lanky, crazy ones. I guess they're all crazy, but the tall, lanky white people. And then there are the Gen 2 Albinorics, which look like frogs. Okay, great. But there are also the female Albinorics, which all seem to, of Gen 1, that all seem to end up like Latenna. Loretta is different. Latenna, where their legs don't work very well, but they're amazing archers. They compensate for this by riding wolves. There are Gen 1 Albinorics that seem to walk just fine, like the guy in Stormvale Castle, and others who seem to, I guess, are priests because they have their books around their neck. But there's also the Gen 1 Albinorics whose legs just don't work at all. What's the distinction between legs working, legs not working for Gen 1 Albinorics?
But despite some of their descriptions saying that the Cuckoo Knights were sworn to the Academy, I think that's actually just wishful thinking by Raya Lucaria. The Scholar's armament and shield spells, for example, were actually spells that were, quote-unquote, taught to the Knights of the Cuckoo as payment for their contract. So they were getting paid to fight, and learning these low-intellect spells suited them because they were not proficient sorcerers. For example, instead of casting spells, they would crush broken clumps of glintstone, dubbed faux sorceries or fake sorceries
I hated
by the
those
Academy.
things. They were so annoying.
Most telling about their loyalty is the Cuckoo Knight armor, which says, its left breast is emblazoned with a peering cuckoo, whence came their name, which straight up admits that perhaps the bird's shrewd gaze is an expression of their refusal to be mere servants of the Academy. And in the end, the Knights of the Cuckoo failed pretty hard. They were not only defeated in the siege of Karya Manor, but they were turned into puppets there, and many now fight on Karya's behalf. We get an idea of how much they must resent this when they somehow break free and confront Pydia, a Carian, an Albinoric, and a mage. 3 things that they absolutely hate.
I don't recall them breaking free.
But unfortunately, guys, that's where I have to leave things for now. There's an entire summary I also wanted to do about Celia, the town of sorcery, as well. But honestly, I feel like Celia is very difficult to speculate on and puzzle out. So considering how long that would take to put into words, I think it might have to wait until another video. But please subscribe, because I will talk about it eventually, and I think I'll also give Selen her own Prepare to Cry episode as well. Hers is going to be amazing.
We didn't get a
Selen
Prepare to Cry video.
As always. Special thanks to Quelag for reviewing this script, and of course to Miss Pap1, who did all of the incredible
This ball roll
visuals
was
in
so
this
much
video.
fun.
He's a true master.
Like Indiana
And I'm
Jones,
lucky to be
except for
working
running the
with him.
wrong way like a lunatic.
I'll see you.
Folks, I've done it again. I've rambled, darn it all. Huh. That was a good one. So, folks, I think these, like, so Cosmic Sorceries, this one seems like it's not as catchy in that, like, it's not, I mean, it's like, oh, it's Rykard, it's Radon, it's Melania, but there's still so much detail and backstory in these. I'm loving these videos. I am like these videos often start digging into questions and I'm like, oh, I did have that question, and I'm like, I never would have processed that I needed a video on it. And we got to the detail on all the stone masks I wanted. We covered more on R'Lana. It's one of the two. I know the other one's in the DLC. I will never get it right. Don't bother correcting me. I will get it wrong 50% of the time. Actually, it's statistically improbable, but I think I refer to each of them respectively incorrectly 75% of the time. Doesn't make sense. It should be a coin toss, but I get it wrong 75% of the time. Honestly, you got to give me credit. That's mathematically impressive. Speaking of mathematically impressive, folks, you have all been amazing. Comments have been awesome. Attention and like viewership has been awesome. You all have been enjoying this more than enough for me to continue doing this. And it's been a blast, folks. I've been having so much fun with this. This is like, as an autistic, like I'm a creature of structure, and I work out at 8 a.m. I get home, I shower, protein shake, all that jazz, and I sit down with my cup of coffee and I watch these videos. And I gotta be honest, I like the notion of doing this 5 days a week forever. So as long as we have stuff to react to. So the game plan, remember, is this will be Elden Ring. We're doing all of Vaati's videos. Then we will do Tarnished Archaeologist. We'll do Tarnished Archaeologist. We have Color Theory and some others. I'm going to navigate how to separate those, because 2 hours is a little too long for me to just sit and react. I have other things I need to do throughout the day, so I'll have to split it. So I'll either split it into 2 videos or 3, depending on just how it breaks cleanly, because it looks like the color chapters are pretty clean. So I'm trying to figure out exactly how to break that up. And then eventually we will finish Elden Ring. But folks, I'm currently streaming Sekiro 5 days a week, 3 to 9 p.m. UK time. So make sure to come watch that if you want. But my understanding is there will be Sekiro lore videos that I will do after that. And then eventually we'll get to Bloodborne, Armored Core 6. We will get to the Dark Souls trilogies. Folks, there's so much lore to keep digging into here. And I'm going to keep doing these because they're an absolute blast. So, folks, thank you so much for coming to hang out. Make sure to check out my other videos. I've got about 10 of these reaction videos out now. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I can't wait to see all of you tomorrow.